Well, hello and welcome. This is our AACG meetup for Friday, September the 25th, and we are so thrilled today to have Pittsburgh Glass Center and their Art on Fire auction, which is actually tonight. And so we have Heather McElwee with us, and she is going to start the presentation, lead us through the gallery there at the Pittsburgh Glass Center, and we have Sharif Bey, who's also with us as our featured artist, and I'm going to let them take it away because they know what they're doing, and this is going to be a great presentation. So take it away, Heather.
Great, thanks. Hi, everybody. I'm Heather McElwee. I'm the Randy and Elvan V. Dollar Junior Executive Director here at the Glass Center. And Marilee, will you interrupt me if there's stuff in the chat that I need to address? Because I'm going to do my best to keep an eye on it, but if I don't see something, just yell out and I'll address any questions. So feel free to jump in. So as Marilee said, I'm joined by Sharif Bey, who is going to give you a little tour of his home studio and tell you more about his process here in a few minutes. But I'll kick things off by giving you a tour around the whole Glass Center building, telling you a little bit about the history of glass here in Pittsburgh. And then we'll kick it to the gallery. We'll look at some of the auction items, and then we will talk to Sharif. So I'm going to share my screen because can you allow me to share my screen, Marilee? It says host disabled.
Oh no, let me make you a co-host because that's not supposed to happen, but I will do that. Okay.
There we go, perfect.
Do I need to make anyone else a co-host who's going to share a screen?
Probably Paige, or Pittsburgh,
okay.
Pittsburgh Glass Center, I think.
I'll do that also.
Great. Okay, so can you guys see the PGC logo?
Yes.
Okay, then it's working. All right, so one of the things I just wanted to give you like a really brief kind of history. So Pittsburgh Glass Center is located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I feel like something that's a little known fact is that Pittsburgh was actually once the center of glass production in the United States. Long before it was known as the Steel City, it was actually known as America's Glass City. And the first glass factories opened here in 1797. By the Civil War, the Pittsburgh region reigned as the center for the nation's glass industry. So we always tell people that if we hadn't been eclipsed by steel, you'd all know Pittsburgh as the glass city instead. But not even a generation after the glass factories opened here, Pittsburgh's glass could be found everywhere, including the walls of the tunnels in New York City, the searchlights for the Panama Canal, as headlights for Ford's automobiles, and of course in beer halls and pubs, throughout the country. However, our region also produced glass fine enough to use in the White House, and it served 5 presidents. So fast forward to 2000, and the Pittsburgh Glass Center was being built to be one of the most state-of-the-art studios in the country. Many of you may know Kathleen Mulcahy and her late husband, Ron Desmond, who were the founders here at Pittsburgh Glass Center. They had run a program at Carnegie Mellon University for a number of years here in Pittsburgh. And when that program was shut down, they started dreaming of a public access facility in Pittsburgh that ended up becoming the Pittsburgh Glass Center. So by the time that we opened in 2001, the region had already lost most of its glass factories, and many local Pittsburghers didn't even know the rich history of glass in this region. So we hope to change that, not only by celebrating glass making in this region once again, but also by telling the story of Pittsburgh's glass history to students via tours and hands-on activities that we bring in here. And now we'll see if this is gonna run. If it doesn't, then we'll go to plan B. But I do have a video, about a 7-minute video that takes you all through a tour of the Glass Center, which I can tell you a little bit more as we go. So we're located in Pittsburgh's East End, right between 2 really diverse neighborhoods, and on a street called Penn Avenue. And the idea was that all the arts organizations on Penn Avenue could help to really bring these 2 very different neighborhoods together. And this area has definitely changed a lot in the last 20 years since we opened. So here's our gallery. We're gonna come back to that. I'll give you a sneak peek a little bit later. But this is our lobby and small gift shop. We also have some artwork on display in our lobby. That's a Dale Chihuly Macchia that he made in 2007 with his team when they came. Pittsburgh did a citywide celebration of glass, and he came for that, which was really exciting. So again, just another view of our kind of lobby and entry area. We don't have a really formal retail shop, but we definitely represent some local artists that make work in our studios. On the right here, you'll see our Penn Fairmont line, which is a production line that we produce here at the Glass Center of functional tableware. And then we're heading into our flameworking studio. So we have 12 stations in our flame shop with major, minor Nortel torches, as well as Herbert Arnold torches. You see Melissa, our flameworking instructor, in the back there working. And we've definitely heard from lots of flame workers that it's a great studio, tons of natural light, as you can see. And one of the things we always point out to people is that the flameworking studio fronts right on Penn Avenue. You might have noticed that. And it really, sorry, I'm just silencing a call, has tons of light and tons of windows looking in. And people always ask us, like, well, why didn't you put the gallery, you know, right there where people could see all the artwork? And we said, well, we really wanted people to understand that we're a working studio. So as people are walking by or driving by on Penn Avenue, we wanted them to look in and see artists making things and understand that that's, you know, the majority of what we do here. So mostly we run classes, workshops, but we also do a lot of artist residencies, and then we host exhibitions as well. So anyone from someone who's never worked in glass before, all the way up to master artists come and, you know, take summer intensives, teach summer intensives. So here's a quick sneak peek in the gallery. We'll come back and do a more extensive look later. But this is our auction that's all set up. So about 200, almost 200 items up for auction tonight. Some really stunning examples. That's Sharif's piece that's also over my shoulder here. Like I said, we'll come back and do a much more extensive look through the gallery, so don't worry that you missed it. We have a really stunning Thurman Statham mural right across the parking lot, so you can see that out the door there. Our neighbors very kindly let us and Thurman paint this very colorful mural on the side of their building. So now we're gonna head upstairs and into our actually I think we're gonna peek into the hot shop, and then I think we're gonna go down the hall actually. So through those doors is the hot shop. Some of our staff members running to get out of the video. Okay, we are gonna go into the hot shop first. So quick peek into the hot shop. So we have 2,000-pound furnaces and 8 glory holes, or 8 working stations. This is Jason Fork, one of our glass blowing instructors, taking a gather out of one of the furnaces, which I know you guys have seen a million glass blowing demonstrations, so we're not gonna do an extensive one here. But we've also been told that the hot shop's a really nice place to work here because, again, lots of natural light. On the side, it's all garage doors that all open, so tons of fresh air that comes in. It's a really light-filled studio and a really spacious studio, even if we have lots of teams working in there. So now we're gonna head down the hallway upstairs and check out the kiln working studio. So you can see all the lockers. Like I said, we have lots of students. So during the school year, we do lots of local programming. Students from the hyper-local community as well as surrounding Pittsburgh come in. We run an after-school program for youth. And then in the summer months, we kind of shift gears and go to the more intensive model like Pilchuck, like Penland, where we do these week-long classes with master artists from all over the country and the world, really. So now we're gonna peek into our kiln forming studio. This is Becky Smith, one of our instructors. And she's actually making fused cheese platters for VIP gifts. That was part of our ticket package for the big fundraiser tonight. So if you bought VIP tickets, we made a fused cheese plate, a flame-worked wine stopper, you got a charcuterie, a box of charcuterie, and a bottle of wine. So we can't all be together tonight, but we figured we could all celebrate separately. So in the kiln forming studio, of course, we do everything from stained glass, enameling on glass, fusing, slumping, regular kiln casting, so a little bit of everything. Our stained glass classes have been really popular over the last few weeks. Lots of folks in Pittsburgh have stained glass windows in their homes. So I think there's been a real interest in Pittsburgh, a resurgence in stained glass. So heading down into the cold shop, we've been told that we have a very large, extensive, spacious cold shop as well. This is Tate, who's actually in residence right now working on creating a life-size blown human figure in pieces, of course, parts, so he's assembling it together. But you can see some of our cold working equipment, the saws, the grinders. Sharif spent a lot of time in the cold shop. He'll tell you about that later. He came, I think, to really like and enjoy the cold shop. It's a very methodical process for anybody that's ever done much cold working. So here Tate's it's actually just working on cleaning up the edge with one of the big MK saws on the torso part of his figure. So again, belt sanders, sandblasters, grinders, polishing, all that kind of stuff. So We try to keep the studio really well maintained so that any artists that come for artist residence or come to teach classes or come to take classes really feel like they have all the equipment that they could possibly need to make their work in the building. So now we're gonna head back down the hallway and pop back into the hot shot for just a second. Because of COVID, we got this fancy new camera that has like a rolling tripod, and we've been having a lot of fun making all these videos all around our building so that people can be here without being here. So just one more look of the hot shop. You can kind of get a sense from this shot how large it really is. Like I said, there's Jason and team working. So, all right. Nope, try to pause. There we go, okay. So, as Marilee mentioned, I'm super excited to be talking with you guys tonight because tonight is our Art on Fire celebration and auction, and Sharif is our honorary artist. So the event starts at 6:30 online. I'll give you some more details about that later. Usually, of course, this would be a huge 500-person event taking place where we could all be together, but clearly that's not gonna be the case. So instead, we've moved everything to online. Here are some of the highlights for this year. So we've got 4 items that are going to be auctioned off during the course of our program tonight between 7 and 8 p.m. That's the 4 that are in the orange box there. And then we've got 20 premier auction items. And those auction items will close at 9 p.m. And then the other 100 and so regular silent auction items will close at 10 p.m. So I wanted to give you guys some information in case you're curious about how do I bid, how do I see the items. So it's totally free to bid. You do not need to buy tickets. You don't need to do anything. It's free to watch the program tonight. Of course, you know, if you're inclined to make a donation, we would certainly appreciate it, but that's not required. So if you're at your computer, you can go to aof20.givesmart.com and it'll walk you through the steps to get registered. And then once you're registered, you can see all the auction items. And I'd really encourage you to go in and check those out because there's some really beautiful stuff tonight. And for all the premier auction items, you'll notice when you're looking at the piece, it'll say watch video. And we've actually created a video for all of those pieces because we know it's really hard to buy and bid on art when you can't see it in person. So in addition to the great photographs, we have some really lovely videos as well. And then in addition, if anybody is not technologically savvy, they don't feel like dealing with the GiveSmart mobile bidding platform, I'll also be taking proxy bids for any of the live or premier auction items. So you can call me, email me up until 5 o'clock today, then I'd be happy to take a proxy bid instead. All my contact information will be up on the last slide so that you can get that information. So next up, we're gonna take a live tour through the gallery. We're gonna switch computers here. I'm gonna stop sharing and Paige is going to start sharing and I'm gonna mute my computer so we don't get a giant echo. Bear with us as we make this transition and then we'll walk you through the gallery.
Are we good?
Hi, can you guys see me again and hear me?
Yes.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, good.
Okay, great, come with me. So I'm gonna start here talking about one of our premier auction items, this beautiful Reticello bowl by Dante Marioni and Janusz Pozniak. They very rarely collaborate on work. They often work together, as you know, but they very seldomly actually make a piece together. And so not only did they make this piece together, but I don't know if you can get it in the video, but they actually both signed the piece as well. So here's Janusz's signature. Oh, they're upside down, sorry. Janusz's signature, Dante's signature, and of course, you guys know, these guys are the masters of the Reticello technique. So really stunning example of their work. We also have a really fun and whimsical example of some beautiful cane work from Jason Christian, a Seattle-based artist who has used the very, I think, kind of funny reference of an umbrella in Seattle. He said, you know, very fitting. But again, really incredible cane work to create this piece and to make such a fun and whimsical form. Next up, maybe Lisa Zerkowitz donated this beautiful pair of perfume vessels, bottles, with flamework details on the top. And this piece actually won, we do a jury prize for artwork donations. And this piece actually won first place in the under $1,000 category from our jury. So really excited about that. Next up, maybe a local artist. This is Jason Fork. You saw him blowing glass in the hot shop just a few minutes ago. He makes these really beautiful, very subtle vessel forms. And this one, he's originally from Kansas. A lot of his forms reference the kind of Midwest landscape. So you can kind of get a sense on this piece with this kind of beautiful horizon line. To me, it reminds me of like a wheat field or something, and you know, this beautiful dusky sunset going down. Another great piece is this beautiful fused platter by Amanda Simmons. And I always like to pick it up because people don't realize that it's transparent or that there are some places that you can actually see through when it's just sitting on a pedestal. So Amanda's been here to teach, to do residencies. She's going to be featured in a pattern exhibit that we're doing next fall. So we were really excited to get this beautiful example from her. Next up, maybe Etsuko Nishi, a Japanese artist. I'm sure you guys are familiar with Etsuko's work. Beautiful Pat de Bear, a really signature form of hers where she does these two layers, like an inner form and an outer form. I really love this kind of branch-like, you know, brown form that's on the outside, just very reminiscent of the natural world and really, really beautiful. Next up, maybe let's jump to Susan Taylor Glasgow, another familiar name, I'm sure, for everybody on this call. One of her double slices of cake. Susan told us that she's only ever made 2 double slices of cake. So this is one of them. So a rare chance to own one of her really signature pieces. And I'm sure you guys all know, but of course, the fork is also glass, as is the napkin that's screen printed. Everything's glass except for the fabric that she uses to stitch and hold the pieces together. So another really fun, very iconic piece from Susan. I love also, I can't resist picking this one up, Ian Chadwick, who is a UK-based artist as well. I believe started as stained glass artist, but has recently transitioned into fusing and slumping. And each one of these little lines is a stringer that he meticulously places to form these incredible patterns. Ian was actually supposed to come teach in our summer intensive program this summer, and of course, because of COVID, those were canceled, but we look forward to welcoming him back to Pittsburgh sometime soon, hopefully next year, and we're certainly very grateful for this beautiful donation that he sent. Another name that I'm sure you're all familiar with, John Miller, the fun and whimsical John Miller. So this is one of his rib cage series vessels, which folks might not be as familiar with as his fast food series of works. But this is another series that he does quite frequently. And as you know, he basically creates these in a 3-step process. So first he makes this green form, cools that down, goes into the cold shop, cuts these slices into it to reveal the other colors. So it's green, then brown, then yellow. And then he puts that back into the kiln, heats it back up, and then takes it out and blows this blue form down inside of that cup. And then continues blowing the form, stretching out the neck, creating the object from there. All right. So now we're down to our 4 live auction items. So these items will go up for sale throughout the course of our program. So Blaine will be first up. And she actually also won. She won first place at artwork valued over $1,000 from our jury, which was really exciting because Blaine's a young artist. She was just here as part of Pittsburgh Glass Center's Tech Apprenticeship Program. this year. And she actually ended up getting into the master's program at Tulane University. So she's moved on to Tulane this fall to get her master's degree. But a really stunning example of cast work that she's meticulously polished. And I can see why the jury selected this as their favorite piece. So that'll go up for auction at about close at about 7:15 tonight during the program. Next up, I'm sure again, everyone's gonna recognize this piece. This is Nick Mount, Australian artist who has taught here many times, had residencies, had exhibitions here at the Glass Center, a dear friend of PGC. And this is really a stunning piece. You know, as you know, these stopper forms, you know, come out. This is one of his oversized perfume bottles. The center section here is cold worked with a traditional batuto pattern. So the inside has this beautiful cane technique, and then on the outside, he's meticulously cold worked it. Next up is this spinner by Kathleen Mulcahy. So Kathleen, as I mentioned before, many of you may know her. She is one of the founders of the Pittsburgh Glass Center with her late husband, Ron Desmet. And she actually no longer makes the spinner series anymore either. So she retired them back in 2004. Ron used to help her make them. And so she brought this one out of her personal collection to donate to the auction this year, which we were really excited about. You know, and certainly we love Kathleen. She's an incredible artist and has been an incredibly generous spirit to the Glass Center. All right, and then you've been looking at it over my shoulder this whole time. But last and certainly not least is the featured item of the night, Sharif Bey's form. And Sharif will tell you a lot more about his process and his work and why he makes the work that he does. But I'll just briefly let you know that this is a combination of glass. So these are cast glass elements, these 3 rings, and then ceramic bead forms. And you'll often see, as we show images of his work later, that bird forms show up in Sharif's work a lot. So you'll see down at the bottom here, we've got some kind of beak-like forms. And then of course, at the very bottom, we've got this beautiful bird that has this incredible lustered surface in its hollow middle. All right, well that concludes the tour. I'm going to switch over back to my screen sharing and tell you a little bit more about Sharif before we turn things over to him. I'm back. Still good? Okay.
Still good. That
Let me
was
share my
wonderful.
screen again.
Thank you.
Okay. My computer is not advancing the slide. Hello, wake up. There we go. Okay. So we got to know Sharif back in 2017 when he was an Idea Furnace artist in residence at the Pittsburgh Glass Center. And the Idea Furnace program is one that gives an opportunity for people who don't normally work in glass, the opportunity to partner with glass artists to really have their ideas come to life. So Sharif is originally from Beltsuver, a neighborhood on the south side of Pittsburgh, although he now lives and teaches in Syracuse, New York. And he first discovered ceramics at the Manchester Craftsmen's Guild, which I'm sure he'll tell you more about when he speaks as well. So he was an Idea Furnace artist for over a year at PGC and produced a new body of work that included necklace forms that incorporate glass and ceramics together. So here you can see him in the cold shop working on one of the necklace forms that he created for our exhibition. Here he is. I told you he liked the cold shop, doing some more grinding and polishing, working on those necklace forms that he had kiln cast. And honestly, his recent accolades are too numerous to mention, and he's modest and won't do it, so I will. But he was included as one of only 4 artists in Disrupting Craft, which was a show at the Renwick Gallery and Renwick Invitational in 2018, which I was very fortunate enough to get to go and see in person. He also recently had 5 pieces acquired by the Carnegie Museum of Art. He received a Pollock Krasner Award, and next year he'll be having a solo show at the Carnegie Museum of Art. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Sharif, and he's going to give us a tour, and take it away, Sharif.
Hello. Well, it is a real honor to be here, and I was trying
You're
to think
muted.
about. Oh, I unmuted myself. Hello? Can anybody hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Heather, can you hear me?
Heather's muted, so give us a thumb up, Heather, if you
Yeah.
can hear. Yes, good.
Okay. So to me, the appropriate segue, I mean, when I think about the Glass Center, particularly, I think about the Glass Center as like a museum devoted to process. And when we talked about like the flame shop being in the window as opposed to the gallery, I like the idea that things are kind of constantly moving. So I'm just going to start out giving you a quick overview of my studio. It's not super flashy, but and I'm also going to talk a little bit about some of the differences that I discovered between clay and glass as it pertains to process and time. So anyway, I primarily work by hand pinch potting little objects that I later string together. Conceptual necklaces, adornment, bead forms. And initially they were all made individually by hand through basically a pinch potting method. And over time, they kind of translated better into slip cast forms, kind of like you make ceramic dolls, like the hands and feet of a clay doll, porcelain doll. And in many regards, it was very timely that I started doing that a few years ago, because when I endeavored to work in glass, it translated very well because it's primarily the same as working in lost wax. So here's a rough clay bead. Here is a wax made from a rubber mold that eventually becomes, you know, a glass bead. Now, one of the things that really excites me about glass is, despite the perceived fragility of glass, a solid glass form like this is certainly a whole lot less fragile than a clay form. So here's a clay bead, by comparison, is significantly more fragile. Now, another interesting thing I want to point out is the glass, by comparison, does not shrink. So I'm going to show you this kind of thing that I think really is interesting. So here's the original next to the final bead form that, you know, shrinks somewhere between 8 and 12% depending on the clay. So here's another example of like so now I kind of go back and forth, which I really like is, and when I say that, I mean, I will go from working with a glass mold and I'll convert it to clay. And then sometime I'll work from a clay mold that I convert to glass. So here's a form that started out as a glass form. And here's just the mold, but you can get an idea of how much smaller making that same form. Here's the leftover. And again, so I make these forms and I string them together. So here's just kind of a example of how they're strung and how they're fitted. But this eventual piece from this form that started out as a glass form, this is clay, but this will eventually be probably 6, 7 feet long. And another thing I like is, I mean, while I did make a lot of pieces that were, sorry.
We just lost you.
1 second.
At least we can see your name. There we go. But you're muted now, Sharif.
I'm sorry about this, everybody. One of the things that I really like about working in glass also is, while originally I was endeavoring to make like everything exclusively in glass, which is so much more time consuming and so much more costly. Like one of these I'll spend 20 minutes in mold. Here are my molds over here. I'll slip cast these things and I'll wipe them off and they'll be ready to go after I fire them. But of course, if I make this in glass, after divesting it and making the mold, I mean, there's a considerable amount of time left over with belt sanding and sandblasting and polishing that takes a whole lot of time. And not to mention the material investment in a piece like this in glass is significant compared to clay. I mean, it's definitely pennies on the dollar. So without further ado, I'm going to show you some of the combinations that I came up with. And as you can see, the piece that's currently in the auction is a clay and glass piece. But here's a work that involves many of the same elements. There's a comparable glass, comparable clay, mustard form, bird form that's also referencing the vessel. But it's also, this one is actually in a radial as opposed to a more like linear form. And just to give you an idea of scale. Now here's another clay and glass form. These are actually kind of slumped in the kiln, and the frames of them are glass, cast glass. and they're kind of later married together. So if you can imagine, it's kind of a double lens, if you will. But of course, the rest of the form is glass, clay. Now, the other thing about this that's complicated, and I wish I could show you, that's really got me excited about working in glass is when I feature these forms and in the gallery space, you get dramatic shadows, but also I get the evidence of the light shining through the piece and a beautiful aura that it casts on the wall. So in this case, it's almost like the shadows have gold halos around them. So I wish I could share with you what this would actually look like in a gallery context.
Sharif, may I ask you a question? These are meant to be wall hung, correct?
Yes, they're just on my studio floor now. I pulled these out of the archives. This one is still in process, but yeah, these are all large kind of ornamental referenced pieces. Now, the last piece I want to share is something that I've been doing a lot more recently, and this is in progress. But initially, as Heather pointed out, because of the rigidity of my work, and also maybe because I'm a little bit more controlling, I've been very much interested in the cold shop. And more recently, I've been working more in the hot shop, working with glass blowers to realize certain ideas. So this piece, the color scheme will be different. So this is me switching out, but I have the composition more or less what I want to do. But I have these kind of glass blown forms that reference vessels. And then I have these kind of figure 8 adornment pieces that kind of complete the composition. But but interspaced in between these are going to be these kind of various colored individual beads that will later be they're going to be a little bit more sheen, but at least you have an idea of what they look like. So back to my little learning station I have here. And I make a lot of different kinds of work. So these are the more, quiet, repetitious forms. And I think one of the reasons why, again, that I found the cold shop more conducive to my interest in process is that, I'll take these beads and I spend hours polishing these in front of the television. And, the intimacy is really important to me, and getting the right surface is important to me. And I work on a potter's wheel as well. And there's an immediacy in throwing that I really like, and I'm liking that to glass. And I'm kind of just now starting to find my way, in at least the interest that I have in blown glass and how it translates to certain aesthetic intersections that are important to me. So here's another work that is like a whole different conversation, but I'm excited because I just finished it, but it's not related to glass at all. Sorry. But this piece is rather large, and it's part of what I'm calling my protest shield series. And there's, one of the things that I do in my work is I use a lot of different elements beyond conventional use of ceramics. And that's another reason why I want to get into glass, so I can learn how to break the rules of glass, right? But you got to learn the rules first. So in this case, this is an earthenware piece, but lots of different kind of metal impaling the clay. This is fired into the clay. And I also have these little porcelain thorns that I'm starting to integrate into the clay. And I just jam them into the clay. And in this case, you could probably see that there's a piece that was basically torn off and reset into an existing piece. And that's something else that's consistent with a lot of my work. Like, these fists are actually 20 years old. They were just laying in my studio, and eventually they found their way into this work. And it ends up being just kind of a timely, symbolic piece. But just the same way, I have elements in my studio, and when playtime starts, these things just kind of start to converge. So this is a recurring bead form. This is my pile of slip cast forms. But I started this form in 2014. And from the onset of our discussion, when Heather started to introduce me, she shared that massive piece I was standing in front of. But this particular form, I made it in 2004, and it did not make its way into a body of work until prior to that Glass Center show. It's just that for whatever reason, I made the form. It's kind of like Field of Dreams. Eventually, this interesting thing will make its way into the work. Just the same, I have like boxes of these, and are just little clay thorns. And I'm like, hey, one day this will be part of the repertoire of a body of work. And I like working that way.
Excuse me, Sharif, we have an audience question about why have you chosen the necklace form to explore?
Well, I mean, I think that there's a lot of, I mean, if you look on my website, Sharif Bey Ceramics, my earliest work when I became, I always say the vessel is my orientation. I had an infectious interest in surface and pattern. And I would make these vessels on the wheel that I would scar with sgraffitos and pattern and imagery. And as I became more of a sculptor, and that's kind of gradually happened through my education and my interests and my travels, I found that this was a way of being able to integrate a new repertoire of repetitious forms into a composition. And, and more directly, my interest in non-Western forms of adornment and currencies and things that I found in my travels. Specifically, my earliest interests were amber necklaces. So I started to look at these giant amber necklaces and copper bangles and things like that. And they became, again, like a lot of times we make something like a teapot out of wicker. And we don't necessarily intend to use it as much as it's a reference or a way of paying homage to an object that has a history in the human landscape, right? And just the same, I kind of think of myself sometimes as making sculptures about adornment. So this is a 6 feet or 5 foot wall sculpture. Obviously, it's nothing anyone's going to wear on their neck, but in its inception, it was made in proximity to the body. I mean, the neck piece you're wearing, I don't know if anybody can see you, is actually pretty impressive. And one of the things that I like about that aspect of adornment is that, in my opinion, it speaks to power. I've had students, I teach teachers. I've had students in their 20s who are mistaken for high school students. They go into the schools, but some of them who wear like grown-up jewelry, they're not mistaken for kids. Like a 16-year-old would not wear that kind of necklace. Like she's definitely, a much more mature adult. So it's something about power and activating the body and repetition to me is awe-striking. And when I think about like specifically, not just the object, and this is getting back to my interest in glass, it's not just the object, but what is it, like a David Matthews song that talks about the space between? So it's the space between that really has as much power as the form itself. And I think that, in repetition, to me, that's what really activates a space. It's as much about negative space as it is about positive space. So in some regards, very formal, but looking also into the history of ritual and adornment and things that are created in proximity to the body as a point of departure for making wall sculpture. I hope that's a long enough answer.
Thank you.
Sharif, do you want me to show some of your work while you keep talking, or you have more studio stuff to show?
No, that's pretty much the overview. So if anybody has any more questions, or if you want to just share some of the iterations, again, to me, what I'm finding, and I kind of learned this at the end, is I'm more interested in making components to integrate into like the clay glass repertoire as much as I am like exclusively glass forms now. Because also I want to say that, and Heather, feel free, if I can talk while you show things, that works. I also have a lot of feelings about the unique sensitivity to light. I mean, clay is not an easy form. It's not an easy surface to parallel and juxtapose with other forms, other materials. It has a very unique visual weight. So a lot of times I see people who work with clay and fabric and clay and raffia or clay and wood. And oftentimes it just doesn't really, in my view, work. And I think one of the reasons is because it has a very unique relationship to light, and it has a very specific visual weight. And I feel that, there's a nice reconciliation between clay and glass in this format.
Sharif, tell us a little bit about the color shift piece on the front wall here.
Absolutely. So again, the glass process moves a lot slower. And there were times during the idea furnace where I felt like I was meeting with like an interior designer and looking at swatches. And I'm just like, let's just start, And I'm glad that we did have that experience because I learned about, working with different frits and opacity versus transparency and glossy versus matte, which is similar in clay. But one of the things that you certainly can't do in clay is the shift tint. And the beautiful thing about the shift tint is, again, depending on what kind of light quality. And when this was on exhibit at the Renwood Gallery, they have a preparator who specifically works in light, and he was very excited to accept the challenge of conveying the spectrum that this piece could offer. So the bead itself, it ranges from like a lavender, an illuminate lavender, to like an almost I don't know about iridescent, but there is a metallic baby blue quality, depending on the kind of light. But the center of the piece, we're talking about the piece almost dead smack next to the right of the writing there. But in like the tip of the beak, so to speak, is like a very vibrant, matte, almost canary yellow. So I'm interested in more shift tints as well. And these are some of the pieces that I make that integrate shards. And I break a lot of rules by adding metal and clay and former pieces and old student work and old works of mine back into wet clay pieces that I later fire into the piece. And sometimes even works from industry. The piece from the right are a bunch of plates that I got from like Dollar General and Pier 1 that I smashed and reintegrated into the work. And I don't know if we have an option of seeing the work in progress that's in the Glass Center now.
I can go get it. Do you want me to grab it?
If we have time.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can run my mouth in the meantime.
I think you can. If I know you.
Well, I do have a shift tint piece in front of me too, so if we can switch
okay.
screen back.
Here, I'll stop sharing. You can share and I'll go grab that piece.
Yeah, so this is one, again, sometimes I make things, and I think one of the differences between my style of working and other people's is I think of art as being somewhere between science and serendipity. And maybe sometimes I just get lucky, or maybe it's that I've been doing this so long that I take for granted that I am more scientific in the repertoire of experiences I have, or maybe more intuitive. But a lot of times I'll make something and I won't know what to think about it, and then it'll just become. But this is one of the shift tints that I'm not quite sure about. It's comparable to the one on the wall in its composition. So it's the same form, a different color frit, obviously, almost looks flame-like. But if you can imagine 30 of these next to each other, but it has a nice blue in this fluorescent light. Do we see that?
Yeah.
But
yes.
But it goes very green in other light sources. Let's see if I can find another light quality where it gets. I really can't. It's almost like it reminds me of the old glass, like emerald green ashtrays from the 70s.
And the tip on that, Sharif, that's frit that you've dipped it in and used it, or is that?
Well, we don't dip it. So and the other thing too, I'm a big advocate of demystifying process of objects, because I can't do any of this stuff without the knowledge and the institutional memory of the folks at the Glass Center. So I just run my mouth and they throw ideas at me based on my dreams. So I said, what if it was orange? So I said, well, you could, and that negotiation to me is really, it's really great, because there's this negotiation between physics and imagination and science and chance, right? But also through that process, you get to know each other, right? But the reason I'm bringing this up is Ashley McFarland, who's kind of like the casting guru at the Glass Center. She was showing me that, so we make the mold, we burn the mold out, so we have the investment, right? The plaster silica that we're gonna melt the glass into, and then you dump the frit, which kind of looks like a coarse salt, but then this is kind of neat, like to stop it from getting on the edges, she goes in and just kind of blows it with air, with a straw, just to make sure it all settles down. Because what I want is something very specific. I want this line to look like like a flame, right? So I want some, some variation. I don't want it to be a perfect line, but at the same time, I don't want it on the top of the form. I don't want it to, because this is another repetition. So when I have these lined up, I'm gonna have a nice repetition of where the frit comes into the center. This piece is called Nestle. So it's got the idea of all these little beaks converging. But at the same time, this is a nice formal language here of this kind of equatorial ridge and the repetitious power that comes from that composition. So again, some of this stuff is just very formal, but I like to think about natural history a lot. And I also like to see what process and community do for an imagination. So when I put my name in the hat to be an idea furnace artist, I literally had no idea. And my parents are elderly, they're in Pittsburgh. I thought I'd, poke around in the studio and see what happens and have dinner with my mom and dad every night. And, this has been 3 years and I'm still now working in glass after, being in the studio for decades. If you'd have told me 6 years ago that I'd be making stuff in glass with any regularity, I wouldn't have believed you. So
We're glad you're fun.
Well, welcome to the glass world. We love what you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
Sharif, we have the glass example of the ceremonial vessel down, and Paige can share her screen to show it.
Oh, perfect.
You can talk.
Oh, wow. It's on a pedestal. Okay, so what I want to share about this piece is, like some of the vessels you've seen where I'm adding shards, and this is a work in progress, but what's really exciting to me about this piece is I'm bringing my glass families together, right? So I've been working with Jason in the hot shop recently, but prior to that, I worked almost exclusively with Ashley in the cold shop. And the bottom piece is blown glass, but
can we do a share screen with the camera on the piece so we see the piece and hear Sharif?
Oh, sorry, I thought we were doing that. Let's try again.
No, we're not.
Okay.
Although I love seeing Sharif, but it would be nice to see the work.
Well,
We're still not doing it. I'm still seeing Sharif and not the Pittsburgh Glass camera.
Okay, hold on 1 second.
And a lovely shot of you, Heather.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to go troubleshoot.
Okay, thank you. And now we see Hal and Myrna. Hello, how are you?
Fine. If you just
muted, you push this. Go ahead, say now.
I can hear you.
if you just click on the Pittsburgh Glass Center, you'll see the full screen of the work.
Really?
Can you hear us now?
Change my view.
There we go. Fabulous.
all right.
Here, how about if I talk? Am I registering now?
Yes, no, I can see the work now. That's great.
Can you hear me now?
And yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, so this is still a work in progress. It's not finished, and I'm hoping that this will be the beginning of a new and exciting series. But this is an effort to essentially, I don't want to say translate because it implies that it's supposed to be based on something, but it's really just a new endeavor working along some of the same interests that I had with first of all, this still involves reclaiming existing material because we're literally taking, a gather and we're building the form up and then we're rolling that glass into a bed of shards. And then we're going to continue to reheat it, of course, and we're heating up these shards along the way. And then we're continually adding hot shards, piece by piece back into the form, heating them up back into the form. So it's kind of meticulous like my work. But now the challenge is going to be how to kind of marry the overall surface. So what has to be done from this point is the interior of the piece needs to be sandblasted. So some of that glare is going to be offset and it's going to be more liking to the cast lid that's on the piece. So the piece on top is from the cold shop. It's, actually shipped it in ice from Syracuse. So I made the wax here. So it wouldn't, contort too much in the mail, and they casted it in the shop for me. And then I was there, I believe it was last week, in terms of, finishing up that aspect of it. So there's still a little bit more work to do as far as getting some of the glare off the surface and kind of marrying that kind of disparity between like how blown glass looks versus how cast glass looks.
Awesome.
I can't.
All right, I'll go back to sharing some images of your other work.
That is awesome. And thank you, Halimara. I learned something today.
And so there's wax glass forms integrated with clay forms.
That's spectacular.
Thank you.
Is that an earlier work? Is that one of the works when you were at the working at Pittsburgh Glass Center for the?
So the majorities were made. I mean, I technically started the residency in January. I want to say January 2017, and the culmination was March 18. So that's, you know, these works were made. I didn't have a sabbatical. You know, I live and teach at the university, Syracuse University, and basically over this time, I would just go back, and I would have, you know, 3 10-hour days, and I won't go back for a couple of weeks, and I go back for 2 or 3 10, 12-hour days and come back, and again, making the clay pieces, of course, at home. And this is the first one integrating blown glass forms. And this is the shift tint in one lighting context. I don't know if we have an image of it in another lighting context.
I don't think I included it, sorry.
Well, it's on my website, Sharif Bey Ceramics, you'll find it. And this is the culminating exhibition after the install. And most of that, I think 95% of that work was made within that year for the show. We had a few pieces that were already.
Sharif is an incredibly prolific artist, which he needs to be because he makes really big stuff with lots of elements. But
Well,
I don't know if we've ever had an artist in residence work as hard as he did.
Well, the idea too is like I make a lot of little things. So it's kind of like, you know, it's kind of like crocheting a bunch of coasters. Wow, you made so many coasters. You know, just the idea is that I put all the coasters together.
And we have a question about price points for some of your pieces. Do you want to just send them to the website, or do you want to talk money?
You could contact me through the website. This is being recorded, you know.
Yeah.
Once Beyonce starts buying my work, who knows?
That's right. You'll be off the charts.
I'm just trying to get Beyonce to notice me. That's my life's ambition.
All right. We have any other questions for Sharif?
Spectacular work.
Thank you very much.
Now, Sharif,
Where is this?
Where is this right here?
Where is this gallery? Yeah.
Pittsburgh.
Oh, this is at the center.
Pittsburgh Glass Center.
And just wanted to mention, I think Paige put it in the chat, but there's going to be a 30-minute question and answer with Sharif tonight at 6:30 on our website. So again, that's totally free to tune into. You can hear Sharif talk more about his history, how he got started, you know, how the Idea Furnace program was, and all sorts of things. So he's an incredibly engaging speaker. So I hope you'll join us at 6:30 to hear more from him. And I just wanted to say a huge thank you for joining us today, Sharif, and for all you do and all your creative energy.
Yes, and Fred Sanders just said you're joining the Penland board, so you have to come visit Rick and me when you're in Asheville.
Oh, you're in Asheville, absolutely. Well, of course, I'm a huge advocate for Penland and the Pittsburgh Glass Center, and once you get me to run my mouth, I'm not going to stop. So I'm glad to leave you all to your program tonight.
You did awesome. Thanks, Sharif.
Thank you so much for joining us. That was wonderful. Heather, this has really been wonderful too. And what a lovely way to have an auction tonight. So I wish you much success.
Thank you. Yeah, I have just a few last slides. I wanted to leave you with actually a kind of montage video, if you will, of some of the premier auction items that will be on the auction block tonight. So some of them we saw in detail through the tour, but again, just wanted to share that there's some really beautiful things, and I hope that you will tune in tonight at 6:30 for Sharif's talk, and then stay on from 7 to 8 to watch the full auction program.
Those are great shots.
Thanks. We got a turntable, which we were very excited about.
In this world of virtual everything, some people are doing a better job than others. This was great. And here's your contact information.
Exactly. So if, like I said, if anybody's interested in Sharif's work, they want pricing information, you're welcome to reach out to me. That's my email address. You can call me on my cell phone. You can text me. If you're interested in placing a bid for something tonight, and like I said, you don't want to do it online, you're welcome to call or text me, send me an email. I just try to do it by 5 p.m. So that I can make sure to get that registered before things start tonight. So.
Do we have any other questions for Sharif while we have him as a captive audience here?
And you're welcome to reach out to me on my website, sharifbeyceramics.com.
We have gotten, you're not seeing the chat, Sharif, but we're having a lot of excellent presentation comments from our audience. So you did a wonderful
thanks for
job.
representing Penland and Pittsburgh so well, brother.
Glad to do it.
And
It's
Heather,
nice to have all these North Carolina connections. You know, I taught in Winston-Salem, and my wife is from Concord, so I have deep roots. My in-laws live in Lexington, so I have deep roots in North Carolina. My sister lives in Winston.
all right. Well, if there's no further questions, Heather, are we finished with our presentation? If we don't have any further questions, let's see. I've got some chats here. Let's see if I am missing
Thank you very
something.
much. It was excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Fred Sanders wants a wearable version for Sue.
Susan's not tall enough to wear those.
Well, actually, the earlier necklaces are probably, I mean, some of them now are exceeding, 72 inches. But the earlier necklace forms, like I think there may be an image on my website where like my daughter used to be the model. And of course they overpowered her, but I'm thinking they were like maybe 18 to 24 inches. So for a little girl, they were like shoulder pads, but actually somebody could theoretically, you'd be the talk of the cocktail party for sure. But I have
and guys, I've purchased from this auction multiple times. I'm a big supporter of Pittsburgh Glass Center, and I got to tell you, they handle everything impeccably. I've had wonderful pieces come from them.
Oh, thank you so much. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Heather.
Well, thanks everybody. This has been another wonderful meeting, and we've met a new artist for some of us, probably not new for some, but new for me, and I'm excited. I have a granddaughter who graduated from Syracuse, so
Wow.
in art.
Thanks, Heather.
So
Thanks, everybody.
bye everyone. Thank you so
Hi,
much.
thank you. Great job.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
That was wonderful. I'm not recording anymore, but I just wanted to say thank you. That was a good one. So have a nice weekend. Stay safe, Sharif. This was really great.
That was super. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was fabulous.
Terrific.
Absolutely fabulous. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.